Welcome back. Happy 2024 to you, good sir.
Oh, that's right. We celebrate. There's a thing called First Friday here. Um, all the stores downtown stay open, and there are food trucks and all these. And it occurred to me yesterday that yes, this is First Friday of January of a new year.
Right, the first
Um,
Friday of the month, first Friday of the year, first
right, right.
party all together. So yes, so happy we made it to 2024. Kicking and screaming, but we made it.
Man, well, but we're good. 2020. I can't, everybody keeps saying 2024 is going to be a good year, so I'll go with that. We'll go with the optimists.
That's right. We'll do the best that we can.
Right, right.
Speaking of having some confidence and some hope for the new year, we're going to talk a little bit today about kids' confidence and what we do and what we do to encourage and foster confidence, but also some of the things that we do that really deteriorate and negatively affect kids' confidence.
Right. As we go, surf the internet and look stuff up, and stuff comes in our mailboxes. You get articles like this that are titled like this one, which is the number one thing that destroys kids' self-confidence, destroys kids' confidence. Um, that gives us pause. We always sort of stop and say, "Oh, what's this about?" Okay.
Right.
And what this is about, this is an article that was written in CNBC, or it came through CNBC, but it's based on a book that's written by Jennifer Wallace. And Jennifer Wallace is mainly a journalist. She's a pretty respected journalist. And she's written a couple of books, and one of them is called Never Enough: When Achievement Pressure Becomes Toxic and What We Can Do About It. And that is a book that I'm probably going to order, because to me, it's a fascinating topic, because we all know all parents want their children to do well. I mean, that's a given. And we push our kids, most of us push our kids to do well. We structure their lives and their activities, select their schools, so that our children will do well, so that they will succeed. And she's addressing that topic of when does our parental pressure become too much. And I might add that Wallace has written another book, and the title of that book is The Self-Driven Child. And so I think from these two titles, you sort of get her drift of what her concerns are and why we're interested in this this kind of material.
Absolutely. It was wonderful that we were preparing and going to do this topic today, because just this week I was working with a teenager, a kid in high school who was struggling in a class, and he was really having a difficult time in this one particular class, and usually does really well. The class is far more advanced than what he should be in. He's like in 10th grade, and it's a college, one of the AP courses, and so well above where he would typically be. And so he's working to get out of the class. And so as he's going to transition out of the class after the first semester, he was ready to be done with it. And his parents wanted him to go ahead and finish some of the work that was left. Now, there really was no need for it because it didn't account for anything. The grades were in and everything was done. But and they I think in some ways rightly said, hey, it could give you a sense of accomplishment. It could make you feel like, at least you got some of this stuff done. And he was resistant. And it got to the point where dad said, well, how about this? What if I do the work and you just help me do it? And and a lot of parents have been there, and a lot of parents do that. But this teenager said the most insightful thing. He says, I don't understand how I'm going to feel a sense of accomplishment if he's the one doing it.
We should introduce him to Miss Wallace.
Yeah,
It's
and
exactly what she's talking about.
absolutely. And he articulated it so well because that is exactly it. How do we expect a kid to have a sense of accomplishment and feel good about things if they full well know that they're not the ones doing the work or putting forth the effort?
Right. And before we get into this topic completely, which we're going to do in a second, I don't pretend to know. I wished I did, but I don't. I don't pretend to know where that line is between pushing your children and letting them sort of find their own way.
Right.
Okay. I simply don't know what the right answer is. It works both ways, but what I do know is that if you push your kids so hard to accomplish what you want,
Hmm.
if you find that year after year after year that you're doing all the pushing and all the organizing and all the monitoring of homework and grades and assignments and missing assignments, that's a pretty fair indication that you're asking your child to pursue something
Hmm.
that doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
And if it's not theirs, it's not it's never going to be their achievement.
Right. Yeah, and I get where parents are coming from
Right,
because
right,
the dad in the example that I gave, I know that he has very good intentions and
right,
I've talked to him and I know that he wants his son to feel good and he knows his son struggles with confidence
right.
and he's trying to do everything he's like and reached out, at least, hey, I will do it and you just help me and we'll get it done and I'll do and I'm sure that he was talking about, I'll do most of the typing and I'll do most of the
Right.
writing. So you don't, those
Mhm.
are the things that the kid has a hard time with. And, but, but it does get to that point where when do you cross that line to where, the work is actually no longer the kids at all. And it becomes now the parents. And, you know, based upon this article that we read and what we think is that's at the point that starts to become toxic. That's
Right.
the
That's
part where what the parent is doing and starting to step in is taking over and becomes toxic and starts to negatively affect what we're trying to actually trying to accomplish with the kid.
that's right. And there are some signs, pretty easy to discover, identify, stumble over. There are some signs when when your support, your efforts, your insistence is becoming toxic. Okay, and things like who's writing the college essay.
Right.
Okay, this is college. The parents did this a couple of months ago. College acceptances are coming out in January and February. So we're at that season where kids are learning whether they were accepted or not. And we're going to talk about college acceptance when we get toward the end of this podcast. But who's writing that college essay? I mean, I have all kinds of parents who say, well, no, I just wrote it for her, or I wrote it with him. The kids aren't writing their own essays. Colleges know that now, and they're probably going to do away with the college essay because they know the kids aren't writing them. Chat GPT,
I was just gonna say either the parent or AI is
right?
right.
AI can write a college essay. So it's really lost its value. But things like that, who's doing the work? Or that family that you're talking about, who's doing the work? Years and years ago, we would hear stories of nurses who did the night shift and they would bring their kids books and do their homework for them.
Right.
The kids are asleep, the nurses are working the night shift, they're not busy, so they do their kids' homework.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing. Who's doing the work? Second thing is when you're monitoring their achievement more than anything else, when your focus is on are they getting the assignments done? Are the assignments done well? And you're monitoring that rather than their emotional life or their stress levels or their physical health. All the assignments are turned in, but your child has a skin disorder because of the stress that she's under,
Right.
or she's started other self-harming behaviors because yeah, she's getting all A's in her 7 AP classes and her 2 college classes and her online courses, but she's cutting in the middle of the night. Okay. And so what are you monitoring?
Right.
Then the other thing is when you start dragging them places, to whatever or whomever, sometimes they drag them to see us, and the kids don't want to be here. I mean,
Right.
maybe it's good intentions and maybe the parents are onto something, but when you're taking your kids to all these lessons and they're hating all of it, it means that you're making them do your agenda. You're
Mhm.
making them pursue your goals.
Right.
Okay.
And that's like you said, that's when they're dragging them to see us and they don't want to come to see us. Usually it's because the parent and child expect that they're coming here for us to tell the kid to do what the parent
Yeah.
is telling them to do.
Yeah. They want us to be an ally in their effort. Okay.
Right.
But as soon as and so what's the antidote for that? When a teenager comes in here and doesn't want to talk to us, it's not that they don't want to talk to us. They don't want to talk to us about their parents' goals.
Right.
If we let them talk about what they want,
Right.
they'll talk plenty.
Right.
Okay. But then we're not allies with the parents.
Right.
You know, our concern is with the kid.
Right.
And if they get the feeling that we're looking out for their best interest, they're going to talk. Now, the other thing that parents need to be careful of, and this is something that schools struggle with, there's a difference between accommodations and modifications.
Right.
Accommodations are you give a little help once in a while. Your kid's struggling with some math problems or something, give a little help, but they're doing the work. A modification is a change in the requirement, a change in who's doing the work. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to move from helping your child to doing it for your child. Okay, that's a sure sign that you're headed in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. And so we get it that parents are constantly working to find a balance.
Right.
And you know, there is a price though that we pay if we get it wrong. And this isn't a, be this big warning, watch out because you're going to ruin things
Right.
forever. But
No.
it is a warning that, you know, things may not end up in result in the things that you are hoping for.
Right.
Very quickly, when kids are in these situations, we see certain patterns. We see that, kids go from, they may be interested in school but all of a sudden they become very passive, or they even start to rebel and
Right.
push back against the parent.
Yeah.
It's not, they don't, they're not driven to do the schoolwork because they know that it's going to get done anyways. They know that there's going to be this big safety net that's going to catch them. So they become very, very passive, and
Right.
that appearance of laziness that parents talk about sometimes in their kids, or they just become rebellious and they
Right.
just fight back and say, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You hear them say everything from, college wasn't my idea. I didn't want to go to college. I went because you told me I had to go.
Right.
And then finally they'll get to open rebellion and say, I'm out. I'm done with this. I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
inside your good intentions, and I don't for once question the parents' intentions. They're good
Sure.
intentions, but inside that are the seeds of demoralization.
Right.
Okay. And that's what you have to recognize, that despite how good your intentions are, despite the fact that you do know what's best for your child is going to be better off with a
Right.
college degree than without all that.
Right.
Okay. But if the child doesn't buy that, if that's not the child's world, then all the work, everything that you're doing is
Hmm.
probably going to be for naught. You're either going to make a kid passive and say, fine, I'll do it because you want me to, or they're going to go into rebellion and just disappear. Okay.
Right.
So as you think about making your child successful, we want you to think very clearly about the following things.
Yeah. Yeah. So we worry that, and in talking with kids, like the student that I was talking about earlier, we start to see that kids will assume certain perspectives. And so they
Right.
may assume the perspective that, well, my parents don't really think that I can do it on my own. So that's why they're doing it for me. So they know that their parents don't trust them, or they may, a lot of students will develop a sense of guilt, and they feel bad because they don't care about something as much as the parents care about it. And so
Right.
they feel bad for that. They can't make themselves care more about it, but they feel bad that they don't.
Right.
So they start to develop these negative feelings about themselves, because they feel like, well, they may develop a sense of learned helplessness. Oh, well, I can't do that. I have ADHD. I can't do it, or I have this problem and I can't do it.
Right.
And the parents are reinforcing that by assuming it and taking it over for them.
That's right.
Or again, they just start feeling guilty and, can lead to depression and anxiety.
Yeah, kids know when the expectation is that you have to accomplish my goals.
Right.
Okay, that's your role. That's your goal. And so there is this. Bernie, how many patients have you had? How many families have you seen where the parents are monitoring every assignment?
Yeah.
Well, what many kids do is they say, "Well, if my mother's going to monitor it, why should I?"
Right.
I mean, that's stupid. If you're gonna clean the car, why should I clean the car? If
Right.
you're
Exactly. It doesn't make sense that parents say, I want him to care enough to go in and look at his grades and look at what he's missing. But meanwhile, the parent is doing the same thing every day and telling them everything he's missing. And so,
right,
yeah, why would he duplicate that work? He knows his mom's going to tell him. So why would he look?
right. So if you want your child to be self motivated, you want internal motivation, then don't take all that away. Then make your child move in that direction. Set it up so that the child is doing the work. If you're doing the work, they're not going to.
Absolutely.
If you're willing to do their homework, why should they do their homework?
Right.
It's like this grade recovery business. If I don't have to do anything till the last week of school, a lot of kids are going to opt for the last week of the grading period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So parents, here's a few things that we would like for you
Right.
to think about and consider as
Right.
you're tackling some of these things. The first is think about how you're defining success.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
defining success based upon your kids' grades, their grade point average, how they do on tests, or how well they're performing in sports? How are you defining success?
Right.
Um, because how you're defining success is going to lay the road just a bit about how you are managing this with your student, with your
That's
child.
right.
The
We
more
live
you're
in
concerned about the outcome, the more you're just going to focus on what is that ultimate
right.
score or
Right.
performance.
We live in Florida, and the flagship university here is the University of Florida. And so the goal began. Now imagine if you told your child every day from kindergarten on, honey, the goal is we want you to go to UF. We went to UF. We want you to go to UF. So everything we do is poured into UF. What happens to that poor child if he doesn't get into UF?
Right.
You've set up this goal and then they don't achieve it. And that's what we talk about. That's what Wallace is talking about when she said it contains the seeds of demoralization. All right.
Right.
Because you set up these goals, but if the child doesn't achieve it, then the child's a failure.
Right.
Okay. Second, who gets to decide how do you define success? And then in your family, who gets to decide what
Right.
success is? What does success look like?
Absolutely. When does the child define what success is to him or her? Like, how do they know what success is?
Yeah.
Yours was a great example. If success is automatically defined by admission into the University of Florida, if the kid has no interest in going to University of Florida, but that is what success is, they'll never achieve success.
Anything short is a failure.
Right.
Okay. And so we have to be careful about what you set up as the goal, how you define success.
Right.
The third thing is, how long do you insist on your definition? Do you give up when they're 15 or 17 or 16 or 18 or 21? How long do you insist on your definition? Because eventually the child is going to take over.
Right.
The child might be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, but eventually the child's going to take over. It's going to be theirs, right? So at what point, how long do you insist on this? What if the child is in fifth or sixth grade and isn't a straight A student? Well, they're probably not going to go to Harvard, all right? So they're probably not going to get into Notre Dame if they're not an all-state athlete. They're
Right.
probably not going to play football at Notre Dame, no matter how much you want them to, right?
Right.
And so when do you stop? At what age do you stop imposing your definition of success? The
Yeah.
other thing is related to that, does success have a shelf life?
Yeah.
When do you, Bernie, you and I see plenty of patients whose children are 20 or 21 or 22, and the parents say, he doesn't have a job, he didn't finish school. Are you a failure at 18, 20, 25, 30.
Right.
When do you say my child failed? Because some children don't succeed until they're in their 30s or 40s.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
does success have a shelf life? I don't know. I don't
And I
think so.
think that this brings into focus what the author of that book, Wallace,
Mhm.
is talking about, and that is, we have this perspective that each generation is going to do better than the previous
Right.
generation. That
That's
we
right.
we all believe that, and sort of have this idea that our children are going to perform better and do better than we did, and we usually define that by quote unquote success, however we're defining success, and you know but we have to be careful, because again, how are we defining success, and are we making some assumptions that are really just no longer valid. you
That's
know
right. That's
Wallace
right.
calls this
Because
the encore effect, that the encore, that our children are going to be better, that one last act, that one more number that the performer will provide, that it's going to be the best. That's going to really put the cap on things, and it's
right.
just not. It's more difficult now than it has been.
That's right. And we talk about that in our practice, that it's very different today. And this assumption that our children are going to do better than we did, or even as well as we did, you need to be careful with that, because in the first place, the cost of college has more than doubled in the last 20 years, not in a generation, but just in the last 20 years. I mean, there's 20-year difference in the ages of my children. So even my children have experienced this.
Right.
Um, that tuition, as state legislatures cut funding to universities, universities had to raise tuition and fees.
Right.
So now it costs far more. And 40 years ago, it's probably by a factor of 4.
Right.
A $10,000 college education now could cost 40 or 50,000 or more per year. Okay?
Right. And
Same
it
with home prices.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say the same thing. Home prices, you look at, back in 1990, which it's crazy to think that was,
A long time ago.
almost 34 years ago now.
Right. Mhm.
The average home price was about $150,000 a year.
Right.
Now, obviously, economics are different, but $150,000 then is about $360,000 now.
Right.
The average home price in 2022 was $535,000.
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
$200,000 more
Then
than
your money can
was
buy.
40 years. So, things are different.
Right.
It is much more. There's this idea that kids. You use the example, University of Florida. There's this idea that kids will go to the same college that their parents went to. Well,
Right.
that is becoming more difficult as well.
Right. Yeah. I was astonished by these numbers.
Yeah.
In 1980, so that would be your parents,
Yeah.
okay, 21% of the applicants who applied to Yale were accepted, 21%. In 2023, it was 4.5%.
Yeah.
UCLA, 1989, 42% were accepted. Today it's 9%.
Yeah.
Okay. Harvard, 1990, it was 18%. Today it's 3%.
Right.
So there's a good likelihood that you couldn't get accepted to your alma mater today.
Right.
And your kids are going to have a much harder time. We're talking about 18%, it's almost 20% versus 3% who
Right.
got accepted to Harvard. It's a
Yeah.
much different climb. It's out of reach for most people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the same with the University of Florida. Most 10% of the kids get accepted to Florida.
Yeah.
So when their parents went there a generation ago, maybe 30 or 40, probably 40% got accepted.
Right.
Okay. So this notion that that each generation is going to get better is probably not a valid assumption.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll leave you with a little bit of advice. And the first piece of advice, of course, is that we need to work to reject the idea that there's only one way to succeed.
Right.
There is only one singular definition of success.
Mhm.
Because there's not. There's many ways to define success. There's many ways to achieve success. And
Mhm.
at some point, we have to allow our kids to decide what success means to them.
Mhm.
It may not be what we want, but if as long as it's just what we want, they're not going to have an intrinsic drive to achieve it anyways.
That's right. If you have more than one child, I mean, different kids are going to pursue different goals.
Yeah.
Okay? Even within the same family. Some kids may want to go to college, some kids may not want to go to college. Some may want to work with their hands, some may want to be art. Kids have to pursue their own goals. It's the only way they're going to do it with any enthusiasm. And it's the only way it's going to be their victory. Okay.
Right.
The other thing is let kids do the activities they enjoy, not what looks good on a resume or a college application. Let kids develop, let them evolve, let them open up on their own. Okay. Most of all, however, be careful about achievement at all costs. When we push this notion of achieve, 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 you have to go to this college, you have to take AP classes, you have to be on the all-star team, you have to be on all-state, you have to win these competitions, you have to be the best reader in your. When we push achievement, children will often confuse their sense of self, their self-confidence with their achievement. And we don't want to do that. As a parent, you don't want to do that. You don't want to tie your kid's self-concept, self-esteem to some measurable achievement like an SAT test score.
Right. Yeah. This is the idea of snowplow parenting or lawnmower parenting, where you're pushing the snowplow in front of your child, clearing the path so that they have this clear thing. The problem with that is you're deciding the path. The child
Exactly.
decide the
Right.
path, and when that's the case, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if your child is going to find themselves willing all along the way to
Right.
continue to follow you. You may look back and all of a sudden they're off somewhere else.
That's
And
right. So there's two things. You're choosing the path and you're clearing the path.
right,
Okay. And that's not the child's victory, that's your victory. And
absolutely,
eventually it has to be their victory. So
absolutely.
your task as a parent is you have a single task, and that is to get your child ready by age 18 to be able to pursue whatever goals they have set for themselves.
Right.
It's their goal, it's their life, and it's their goal. Your job is to make sure that they're independent and able to achieve those goals by the time they're 18. That's another huge mistake we're making. We're keeping kids dependent on us too long. By 18, they should be ready to go out and do it themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we will continue to talk about this topic because this is such an important topic, and we keep reading and seeing examples of where we're kind of falling short of
Right.
this in many ways. So we will keep talking about it and share as many ideas and strategies and thoughts as we can with you.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So that's it for today for our first episode in 2024.
2024. Yeah. Welcome to January. Welcome to 2024.
Yep, we have a lot more ideas for this year and what we're going to be talking about. So we hope that you will come back and see what we have to offer.
A little bit of a spoiler alert. We have a hot topic for next week.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We were talking about Chat GPT, AI,
Mhm.
AI generated psychological therapy.
There you go.
Stay tuned next week. We're going to
Okay.
do Chat GPT as a therapist.
That's
So
right.
stay tuned for that. I'm going to need your help with that, Dr. Wood. I'm going to need your help with that one because it's got words like bot and all that stuff, all that technical language. So you're going to have to hold my hand on this one.
We'll be ready for it. So
Okay, good.
until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.